Introduction to the Book of Titus. Diverse people, diverse problems. An island of liars, brutes, and gluttons. These, then, are the things you should teach, according to chapter 2, verse 15. Modern people, reading about the past, can blur people together into a uniform, faceless crowd of strangers. It's hard to visualize individual people you read about. Actually, the people Paul addressed were as diverse as those you might meet on the streets of any large city. Consider Crete, an island populated by 5 fiercely independent ethnic groups. Its main knowledge of the outside world came through pirates and coarse sailors. Add to that mix a large community of straight-laced Jews, and you can see why the Cretan church was born amid conflict. Titus the troubleshooter. When problems erupted in the stormy congregation, Paul dispatched Titus, his trusted associate, at 15 years. The book of Galatians, according to chapter 2, verses 1 to 5, introduced Titus as a proof that a non-Jew could become a fully acceptable Christian. When Titus' name occurs in the New Testament, he is usually seen serving as Paul's troubleshooter, the one called on to deal with local crisis. Twice, he was sent on a diplomatic mission to the rowdy church at Corinth. This letter indicates he faced an equally challenging task on Crete. Paul wrote the book of Titus as a set of personal instructions on how to handle a difficult assignment. Because he was writing to people who knew the local circumstances well, Paul rarely bothered to give background for us years later. But we can gain insights into the conditions by reading between the lines. For example, when Paul tells Titus to search for a leader, the quote, not weak-tempered, not given to drunkenness, not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. According to chapter 1, verse 7, that description implies something about the average Cretan. One of the island's own poets described Cretans as always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons. Check on chapter 1, verse 12. And the Greeks had even coined a special verb for lying, which is to critize. Titus chapter 2 lists some of the diverse groups in the church: older men, older women, younger men, slaves. Each presented a set of problems that needed attention, and Paul gave Titus specific counsel on each group. Although he was mainly emphasizing the need for good living, Paul also dropped in a few concise statements of the gospel message. His theology was never distantly theoretical. He applied it to real-life human problems. Taken as a group, the 3 pastoral letters, the 1st and 2nd Timothy plus Titus, show Paul, an old man now, learning to rely more and more on capable assistants to carry on his work. The Cretans needed a hard-hitting, practical reminder of the sound doctrine based on a God who does not lie, according to chapter 1, verse 2. The instructions in Titus give the man for whom the book was named, and us the needed jolt. to read Titus. Like 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus is written to the individual, not a church. This letter has similarities to 1st Timothy, but is less personal and more official. The book of Acts doesn't mention Titus, but 13 references to him in Paul's letters indicate that he was one of Paul's most trusted helpers. In some letters, such as Galatians, Paul fought valiantly against legalism. But the church in Crete, full of immature Christians, needed basic lessons in morality, and Paul spelled them out for Titus. Using a very straightforward style, he told his associate what he would prescribe in such circumstances. Because it is written in such a direct style, almost like a training manual, Titus needs little explanation. Paul's meaning comes through clearly. Note particularly how Paul adapts his overall principles to specific groups in chapter 2, and give careful study to the nuggets of theology in these passages. Chapter 1 verses 1 to 4, chapter 2 verses 11 to 14, and chapter 3 verses 4 to 7. Plans for reading Titus. Plan 1. An overview of Titus in one day. So for day 1, read the introduction to Titus just like what we've just done, and then proceed to chapter 2, which contains Paul's practical advice for the diverse groups in the Cretan church. Now for plan 2, all of Titus in 2 days. Day 1, chapter 1, for day 2, chapters 2 to 3. Alright? Introduction to the Book of Philemon or Philemon. Letter to Slave Owner. A slave's life hangs in the balance. Although in Christ I could be bold and order you to do what you ought to do, yet I appeal to you on the basis of love. Onesimus was a runaway slave, a hunted fugitive whose life was in constant danger. He had two options. He could spend his days hiding in the dark and creamy alleys of a Roman city, dodging soldiers and bounty hunters. Or he could do the unthinkable and return to his master. The laws of the empire were harsh. If Onesimus did return, his master Philemon had a legal power to sentence him to immediate execution. If Philemon mercifully decided to let him live, Onesimus would have the letter F, which stands for fugitive or fugitivus, seared on his forehead with a branding iron, marking him for life. Paul defends a runaway. His conversion to Christ through Paul's ministry greatly complicated the decision of the runaway slave. Onesimus knew he couldn't keep running all his life. He had wronged his legal owner, and painful as it seemed, he needed to make amends. The Apostle Paul, sympathetic to the slave's cause, agreed to use his full influence on Philemon. Onesimus' life hung in the balance. The 468-word letter to the slave owner masterfully brings together Paul's skills of persuasion and diplomacy. Every phrase in Philemon is crafted to produce the best possible effect. Paul appeals to Philemon's friendship, his status as a Christian leader, his sense of love and compassion. He doesn't outright order Philemon to consent, yet he applies blatant pressure, reminding Philemon in verse 19 to quote, "You owe me your very self." Addressing the letter to Philemon's church in verse 2 increases the pressure, as does Paul's promise of a personal visit, stated in verse 22. Christianity and slavery. Slavery existed for 1,800 years after this letter was written, and it took the full moral force of Christianity to ban it from the globe. But the tiny book of Philemon shows that the faith had a profound impact on slavery long before abolition. Christ can revolutionize any social relationship. Onesimus, a runaway, decided to turn himself in. In Philemon, Paul asked for a second miracle. He pleads with the owner to welcome him as he would welcome me. As stated in verse 17, such an attitude in that culture was social dynamite. How to read Philemon. Obviously, Paul had a close relationship with both slave Onesimus and his owner, Philemon. Some scholars believe that Onesimus first heard about Christ when he shared a jail cell with the apostle, according to verses 9 to 10. As you read Philemon, look for clues into Paul's relationship with this person. Philemon gives a model of Christian diplomacy. So as you read it, think of awkward social situations you know about. Two estranged friends or a parent-child conflict, for example. And notice the kind of persuasion used by Paul and try to apply it to your own circumstances. For our reading plan for the Book of Philemon, we only have Plan 1 or Philemon in one day because it's just one chapter long. So Philemon will just take only a few minutes to read or to be read. Alright? The Book of Philemon concludes the letters of Paul. Again, Paul's letters are the following. We started with the book of Romans, the 1st and 2nd Corinthians, the book of Galatians, then Ephesians, followed by Philippians and Colossians, then the 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, the 1st and 2nd Timothy, the book of Titus, and the book of Philemon. Now for the pastoral letters of Paul, they are the 1st Timothy, the 2nd Timothy, and the book of Titus. Alright? So that's all for now, and God bless us all.